I'm Nishat Mariam, and I'm a women's rights activist. I've been in the field for almost more than 7 years now. I've worked in the development sector, primarily on education, health, gender, and now I've sort of jumped into the humanitarian sector. I think I was sort of born a feminist since I was, I think, a very young girl growing up, especially in a low income sort of background. My parents were both working in the government sector, and they were trying to really hard to make ends meet, and they didn't have a lot of time for us. But what I started realizing was that I was being treated a lot different than my brother. He would get a lot more opportunities to go out, to play, and have fun, while from a very young age, my parents just started telling me what to do or what not to do and what young girls did and didn't. So this realization was very early on, and as I grew up and started interacting with a lot of feminist literature and saw a lot of activists around me doing, advocating. That's what got me into feminism. And I think once I started, I was more on, I'd say, the liberal feminist side. So now I've sort of transitioned to the intersectional and sort of the radical feminist faction at this point. But it's been a huge journey. A lot of things happened in between, specifically with me jumping into activism that really radicalized me. And I saw what the society was firsthand, and also a lot of my own experiences with sexual harassment or abuse. Even a lot of death or rape threats. That sort of converted me to the other side. That's why I'm advocating a lot more radically now. So Malala has been a huge inspiration to me, especially her work on gender education and the way she stood up to the society. And she's still a huge voice in the development sector, specifically for the women of Sabat who've been oppressed for a really long time. They don't have a lot of opportunities to study or to express themselves, and she's been a huge beacon of light, given the advocacy that she's doing currently. In Pakistan, we've seen so many other women, especially from indigenous communities, who've been leading a lot of campaigns like the Sindhyani Tehreek. That was a major sort of campaign in Sindh where a lot of women stood up and demanded their rights. A lot of women from Women Action Forum have been huge inspirations for me, specifically in the time of General Zell Huq, during the dictator time. They were extremely vocal, and they were advocating against the concept that women should be behind, four walls and a chadar, which is the local sort of garment that you cover yourself up with. There's also been Asma Jahangir, who's been a huge inspiration to me. She was an amazing, incredible lawyer, and especially in the General Zia regime, she was very vocal. She's been beaten up. She's faced a lot of hate, a lot of threats, but she still advocated. A lot of women from Aurat March have been a huge inspiration to me, specifically when it started out in, I think, 2017 in Karachi. That was a huge moment. I saw so many women come out in huge numbers, just dancing, singing on the roads, demanding what their rights, and just sharing their personal stories. Because in Pakistan, that was always considered a huge taboo. I've also been inspired by Dr. Farzana Pari, who is one of the most amazing women in Pakistan. I'd say she's the pioneer of gender studies in Pakistan. And I think because of her, a lot of people have this opportunity to study gender studies in Pakistan, which is a very important subject. I grew up in a very low income community. My parents struggled to make ends meet. And they grew up very conservative, and that's what we were also raised up to be. But it took a lot of time for them to accept me. I've been attending Aurat March Islamabad, which is the annual march that happens on International Women's Day in all major cities in Pakistan. So it's considered a lot radical in Pakistan, and my parents were quite opposed to it initially. I think for almost 6 years, I had to hide and just attended without them knowing, and put on a mask, or maybe change my appearance a little bit so I wouldn't be recognized if I was ever on television. But slowly, gradually, having these important conversations at home, they've started to understand where I'm coming from and what I'm advocating for. And they've slowly gotten on board with that. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to see myself. I mean, the evolution that my parents have had in their thought process and how they look at the society now, specifically from a woman's standpoint. I think a lot of times Pakistan's portrayed quite negatively. We just had the gender parity index report released a few weeks ago, and Pakistan's been ranked, I think, the last, and that's been a huge, huge sort of discussion internally and globally as well. Something that I'd really like to say here is that a lot of times the gender parity index has indicators that the government of Pakistan does not have specific data on, so it doesn't truly reflect the position that Pakistan is gender wise. We do have a lot of improvement. We've also seen a lot of improvement in terms of gender in the past couple of years. I'm not saying it's all great and Pakistan's one of the best, but what I'm trying to mention is that the situation in Pakistan might not be as worse as we think it is, or the way it's portrayed globally through the media. Especially in higher education, if we look, there's a lot of parity. The number of women that get higher education is almost as equal as men. We have a lot more enrollment of women in primary schools, which wasn't happening before, but that's seen a huge improvement. We see women entering the workforce a lot more now. We also see a slight increase in gender tagging when it comes to the budgeting that's happening. And there's a lot of work that's being done through the development sector as well. So one of the misconceptions I would see is, I would say that I see a lot is that Pakistan's portrayed quite harshly in media. It's portrayed very unsafe. A lot of people here are very hospitable and they um, are very caring towards individuals who do come here and visit. Tourism is a huge deal in Pakistan. We have beautiful landscapes that often is underreported. But other than that, I would like to bring this up as well that what's Pakistan doing in terms of gender it needs to be done a lot more. There are women who are still suffering. Education also is quite difficult for a lot of factions. The economic condition of women is also they're in dire need, especially when it comes to climate, sexual and reproductive health. There are huge, huge gaps that Pakistan still needs to address. Okay, so I started off as a volunteer in 2018 in Islamabad. I was in the security team. So a lot of what I saw was that the police was cooperative initially because this was something new and the international media was highlighting it a lot. But after a couple of years, the administration got a lot stricter with us because they saw that a lot of we were gaining a lot more support, a lot more people were coming in, and they were resonating with the messages that we held up. So the administration started doing crackdowns on us. There was a lot of hate that we saw whenever we visited the bureaucracy offices, whenever we tried to initiate conversations with the government, or even for no objection certificates that you need in order to protest. We saw that with as the movement progressed, we saw that they started getting rejected by the government because they saw us as a threat instead of something that would, bring international support. So in the past, I think 4 to 5 years, it's become quite difficult to protest in Islamabad and other cities as well, specifically because of the administration. A lot of right wing protesters have also come up. We receive a lot of threats from them every single year. So the government applies a lot of tactics. We've also seen police being involved a lot now. They try to push us as much as they can and to not allow us to reach Islamabad Press Club, where we usually protest every single year. They've pressured us to take our protest to F9 Park. As if we are a small picnic of women. They try to ridicule us, and they also try to add barbed wires or prisoner reds in the way, and they even bar us with containers and don't let us reach the press club. So it's the political environment for us is shrinking every single year. My experience so far has sort of it's going towards a negative at this point because of all the sort of backlash we see from the state. We also see that last year, right wing protesters were allowed to march while we were barricaded inside and we weren't allowed to even move an inch. So a lot of these things just make me furious. And I think I'm sort of turning into an angry feminist at this point because of how we're treated. So this sort of behavior just sort of makes me hopeless at times. But still, the cause is so important that each year we show up despite burnout, threats, backlash, and a lot of pressure. Pakistan has amazing legislation. We've got amazing pro women laws, but the enforcement is extremely poor. We've signed CEDAW, we've signed a lot of international conventions, but on ground we don't see that being implemented, which is extremely sad. I mean, we have a law for marital rape in Pakistan, but not a single case has been lodged till date, which is so sad to hear, given that we have such important legislations. We had an amazing transgender rights bill in Pakistan that was, I think, challenged last year in the Sharia court. That was a very progressive bill that wasn't, I think that wasn't even globally anywhere. I mean, it was such a beautiful sort of bill, and seeing that challenged last year was heartbreaking to see. Transgender individuals were getting education, they were able to get a CNIC, get registered, and get jobs, but now that's been overturned and they're back to square one. Other than that, we've got amazing anti-sexual harassment laws in Pakistan, but again, the implementation is so weak that a lot of rapists, abusers, they just get away with it. And it takes years and years of trials to actually even come to a conclusion. We saw Noor Muqaddam's case. She was brutally murdered by her partner in Islamabad, and the case went on for 4 years. And even then, we were scared that the person would somehow get away. So next, I'm trying to go abroad and do my master's in global development because with 7 years of activism and almost 4 years in development, I see that with the progressing world, we see a lot more challenges that at times I feel that I'm not well equipped to address or to speak on. So I'd like to pursue a master's. I'll be pursuing that from the UK. And yeah, that's what's next in line. But I do hope to start my own organization that's focused on sexual and reproductive health rights in Pakistan, because again, these are huge issues that just go ignored in Pakistan, and they're just taboos at this point. They don't seem to be highlighted by the government or media at all, and even women are too scared to speak about them. So I'd like to set that up once I'm back in Pakistan, and I'd like to continue my advocacy with Orith March as well. Just advocating for women coming out each year to protest and just highlighting the issues that we have in Pakistan. I think right now I'm also struggling with hope because I see a lot of pain around me every single day. We see so many cases, so many heartbreaking incidents we witness every single day. But I think change does not come about in a couple of years. It even takes centuries at some point. So I'm still hopeful. The fight is still ours. Each year we'll keep coming out of the streets, just representing ourselves, just trying to advocate as much as we can, because if we sit down, who else is going to take this fight up?